The story of the White Sox offseason will be who they trade Garrett Crochet to. So let's power rank those teams rumored to be interested in the ace next on Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the FanSided Network. And also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And also follow or subscribe to the show at wherever you get your podcasts. And since the White Sox will sit out free agency despite winning just 41 games, the main story will be them trading their ace, Garrett Crochet. So let's power rank the teams interested in acquiring the left-handed pitcher. Then Yoan Moncada is rumored to have a market. Let's discuss if those teams are crazy to think he will rejuvenate himself someplace else. And then let's discuss the White Sox already starting the purge of a roster that lost a historic 121 games. And you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, so I'm going to go with Buster Olney's recent write-up in ESPN.com on Garrett Crochet's trade market, as at least it puts all the teams that are rumored to be interested in the ace, or could be, as it feels like with each passing day, you get at least a new top three, or a new top five, or he's available to everyone because he's only going to be potentially making $2.9 million in arbitration, according to trade rumors, MLBTradeRumors.com. And I know the one consensus, it seems like, that will be interested among any insider is it'll be Boston and the Dodgers. But you still can have, from what Olney lists out, Chris Getz, and Chris Getz did say at the GM meetings, teams are interested. So I think Olney did put together a good list, and it's the Dodgers, Boston, the Orioles, Mets, Philadelphia, Yankees, Braves, Padres. Now, right off the bat, and it's going to be a die on this hill, and I know I'm dying on this hill, but it's just because of the being traumatized by Miguel Vargas, but no to the Dodgers. I'm sorry. We're not doing business anymore with the Dodgers, folks. They are dead last on my list. On the other hand, I'm not going to let what turned out to be a failed trade of Chris Sale to Boston for Michael Kopech and Yoan Moncada prevent me from putting Boston at the top of my rankings, because there was a brief period where the Sox actually did benefit from the trade. Kopech at one point was a very valuable arm out of the bullpen. Moncada, when he was healthy, did produce at least two seasons where his F4 was above 2. So at least you got something. It just, those two represented how the last decade's rebuild just completely failed overall. Then I'm going to put the Orioles 2, Mets 3, Philadelphia 4, Padres 5, Yankees 6, Braves 7. And how did I formulate my power rankings? I took the average of the most recent farm system rankings, the ones that at least I could access or find that at least was done within the last couple of months. Like I know The Athletic has one out with Keith Law, but it looked like last time he updated his rankings was in February of 2024. Sorry, I'm not going to be able to, with so many subscriptions out there, and there are just way too many subscriptions now out there. Just can't afford the Baseball America, guys. Sorry about that. So went with MLB Pipeline, Fangraphs, Bleacher Report, and ESPN. It's Riley McDaniel, I believe their insider. I think he does actually do good work. You can say what you want about ESPN and Bleacher Report, but I do think both of those sites, when it comes to prospects, actually take the time. So then I looked at who has the most players in the MLB Pipeline's top 100, then how many of there were hitters, and then I looked at how many hitters were in their top 10, among MLB Pipeline, and then how many were close to the big leagues, as the Sox do want position players. That was what Chris Getz said on Inside the Clubhouse on 670 The Score a couple weeks back, and it's kind of what James Fegan, I remember reporting on Sox Machine, saying that the Sox want position players close to the big league level. And so, I kind of was looking at that. And then obviously I threw in context because me, I believe context matters. Okay. If you want to be a simple fan, that's fine. But if you want to be an informed fan, an engaged fan, context matters. And guess who came out with the best average of their farm system? The Dodgers. Average was 5. So why do I have them dead last? The Eric Fedde and Michael Kopech debacle has me terrified that Dodgers team president Andrew Friedman would Jedi mind trick Chris Getz into taking another prospect with a broken leg. Think about that. The White Sox traded for a prospect. I don't care if Albertus has a huge ceiling. The guy had a broken leg, and they traded for him. I could see them trading for a guy with a broken leg and even paying for the cleanup costs for the next Dodgers parade, for crying out loud. Like, I just don't want Friedman on the phone with Getz. Also, do you and I want to see the Dodgers continue to get stronger? I mean, look, I got a nephew, big Dodgers fan. I actually like going to Dodger Stadium. They have one of the best concession stand setups you'll ever see. But do you really want to see them continue to get stronger? And hey, I am not a fan of being petty when it comes to making deals within the division, especially with how buried the Sox are. I mean, again, the logic being, why would you want to trade somebody to your division rival to make them stronger? Well, in the Sox case, I'll make the exception. I'll also make the exception for making the Dodgers even better. Because this is like trading a Mickey Mantle rookie card to someone who already has one, along with a Babe Ruth card and a Ty Cobb card and a Ken Griffey Jr. signed card. Like, it's like the rich getting richer. Stop contributing to the Dodgers winning the AL West. I mean, if there's one thing the White Sox do really well as an organization, it is helping the Dodgers get better. And I'm just tired of it because the Sox keep getting fleeced. Now, Jordan Leisure and Nick Nastrini may turn out to be very good bullpen arms for the Sox, or in Nastrini's case, a very good starter. But so far from what we've seen, like in the Lance Lynn deal, it's not looking good for the White Sox. And that's right. My bias is obviously putting the Dodgers last in my power rankings. However, I could see Getz getting blinded by the light as their farm system's average ranking is the best of the trade contenders. MLB ranking 5, Fangraphs 2, Bleacher Report 8, ESPN 3. They also got 4 players in the top 100. 3 of them are hitters, 7 hitters in their top 100, and 2 are at or above AA. And plus, they could possibly get desperate and throw in Andy Paz, who is still 23, hit 13 home runs with a 248, 305, 407 slash line, and 403 at bats. But the Dodgers have already refused to throw in their top prospect, Dalton Rushing, at the trade deadline. At least that was reported. But my fear is they could Jedi mind trick Getz into going with Alex Freeland, top 100 prospect, does have good on-base percentage and slugging numbers in the minors, but his average declined from high A to AA to AAA. That's a concern, dude. I'm just scared of Getz being on that phone with Friedman. Now, on the flip side, Boston is my number 1, as rumor is the Red Sox could be willing to build a package around Weiler Abreu. Now, a bit on the older side of being young, ironic as it sounds, but he is 25. Finished with a 3.1 F4, 114 WRC plus, 253, 322, 459 slash line in his first full season in the big leagues. Left-handed bat with 15 home runs and a 326 BABIP, 17 defensive runs saved, and right, 7 outs above average. Obviously, you would love to have actual better home run numbers, but he's got good slugging percentage numbers plus good defensive numbers. That's almost like you would kill for Dominic Fletcher to have the numbers that Abreu put up in his first season. And then obviously I discussed on Tuesday's show, plenty of hitting depth in their farm system. That's why I do put Boston as number 1. Even if it seems like it's deja vu that you're trading basically the equivalent of Chris Sale, I still like what Boston has to offer in terms of hitting. Obviously the Orioles, their farm system average ranking is 8. They have just 2 prospects, though, in the MLB Pipeline's top 100 after a bunch of their prospects graduated. But they're studs in Colby Mayo and Samuel Basallo. Plus, they have 7 hitters in their top 10, with 3 nearing the big leagues. You just hired one of the Orioles' former co-hitting coaches and a guy that was involved in their farm system, too, to be your director of hitting. So can't hurt to go with guys that he's familiar with. But my fear is they will probably not part with Basallo or Mayo. They never traded Heston Kjerstad or Colton Cowser. They just never traded those guys because, for example, in Kjerstad's, I probably butchered his name, but in his instance, they wanted him ready to go to replace Anthony Santander. They like having cheap replacements. They like to just keep the line moving with really good bats. So I could see them holding on to Basallo and moving him to first, for example, even though they're covered at catcher. But still, the Brewers, mentioned the Brewers drink, they got a good return for Corbin Burns by getting players out of the Orioles top 10. Ortiz is projecting to be a very, very good baseball player, very good positional player. DL Hall could be a weapon for them, either out of their bullpen and their starting rotation, although he does struggle with injuries. So like Dylan Beavers or Enrique Bradford Jr. obviously may not be bigger names as Mayo or Basallo, but this is the Orioles. They just develop hitters. They develop good hitters. It's one of the reasons why I'm excited that the White Sox named their director of hitting from the Orioles. However, in the big picture, if you just walk away with, like, say, Beavers and Bradford Jr. plus a few scratch-offs, that's going to be a huge disappointment. And I do believe you got to meet this moment. If you're trading a young left-handed pitcher with 2 years left of control that you could technically extend through the rest of the decade to build a just dominant rotation around, if you're trading that guy because you have to fill your hitting problem, solve your hitting problems because you're not going to spend money and you only got a few impact, even a few guys that project to be impact bats, you got to walk away with a guy like Colby Mayo or Basallo because those are foundational players, bona fide foundational players. Now, obviously, they have to prove it at the big leagues, but you look at every consensus, every scout take is saying these guys have the chance to be studs. Where Beavers and Bradford Jr., they could get there because while there's only 2 in the top 100 for the Orioles, what happens? Rankings always get updated, but still, that would be a disappointment. The Mets, the average was 13, 5 players in the top 100, 4 of them hitters, 6 of their top 10 are hitters, and 4 are near the big leagues. Mets head of baseball operations, David Stearns, has a history of not being afraid to pay a steep price to get the guys that will put him over the top at the beginning of his tenure. He traded a Hall to the Marlins for Christian Yelich when he was running the Brewers. However, he did swindle the Marlins. So that is another guy I would be scared of Getz being on the phone with. I would be. I'd be very scared and terrified for him to be on the phone because, this guy was already a GM at like 30. Practically like a Theo Epstein clone. Obviously came from Houston, but still, like in terms of his pedigree, I could see him outwitting Chris Getz because the one thing that Chris Getz hasn't proven is he can outwit his peers. Philly's average was 16. Possibly could have had Crochet at the deadline, according to Olney, had they threw in pitcher Andrew Painter. They got 4 prospects in the top 100, 3 of them hitters, 8 in the top 10. Here's the kicker, though, only 2 nearing the big leagues, so plenty of scratch-off potential there, but you maybe want a guy that can get closer, but they've got some tantalizing prospects with high ceilings. Padres are the same in terms of a lot of high ceiling guys to offer, and AJ Preller is a guy that is willing to deal fairly with Getz, so that's why I put him ahead of the Yankees. But again, no one is close to the big leagues in their system, so you'd have to be very, very patient, and I think you got to come away with, especially if you got Weiler Abreu potentially on the table, and the Padres are offering you Ethan Salas. Salas is very tantalizing, but he is years away where Abreu could help you at the big league level, not only now, but he's under team control through the rest of the decade. The Yankees can offer pitchers like Drew Thorpe, which is not a bad thing, but the Sox have plenty of pitchers. They need hitters. And unless the Yankees are willing to trade Jason Dominguez, I'm not sure they will, given Juan Soto's status. There's not a whole lot there. Spencer Jones, yes, he can crush, but the man has fallen out of the top 100, and he strikes out a ton. Blake Weatherford or Rutherford, who's the guy that they got? I remember, it was like Mike Adolfo and him. Oh, I just forgot the name. But a guy that never turned out, that could be Spencer Jones. Tantalizing, can crush the ball a country mile, but you know what? Joe Borcher could also crush the ball a country mile. He just could barely touch it at the big league levels. And the Braves, they just don't have the young position prospects to offer, and they never were willing to meet the Dylan Cease demand, so I don't think they're going to meet the Garrett Crochet demand either. All right, so a report is out that former and usually injured Sox third baseman Yoan Moncada does have a free agent market. Let's discuss if teams are crazy for pursuing him in the offseason next on Locked On White sox. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And I always maintain FanDuel spreads, over, under, and money lines are fun to play. But if you want to win big or at least double your money, FanDuel's parlays, props, and futures is the way to go. And hey, in America, we don't like ties, but if the first half of the Chicago and Green Bay game ends in a tie, it's at, last I checked, plus 850. And if you put, say, $10 on it, you just won $85 if it ends in a tie. And say the Bears somehow go into the locker room up, that's at plus 210. So at least a chance to double your money if that somehow happens. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back into Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms, so make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. All right, the better way to approach Yoan Moncada's next team is good for him. Wish you luck in your future endeavors. I'm not going to miss Yoan Moncada. I'm not going to wish him ill will either. I'm frustrated that, he couldn't keep himself healthy, but I'm not going to be like, oh man, good riddance to him, because, when he was there was some production. It just, it's one of those things where I'd rather just move on from that failed rebuild, and not having him around is one way to just, let's move on. But right off the bat, if he does stay healthy next season, for whoever he signs with, and he's going to get signed, okay? He's not like his former teammate and partner and speculated being a slacker, Eloy Jimenez, because Jimenez is likely going to have to go to Korea or Japan to revive his career. But, good for Yoan when he gets signed. And it's not going to be an indictment on the White Sox training staff, okay? Folks who cover the team have well hinted that Moncada did not exactly work very hard. Didn't really do a great job of taking care of himself. And you'll be surprised at how many players that, we come to love, or we come to, and again, do the Sox deserve any grace? No. But you'll find out that there are a lot of players that just don't take care of themselves, no matter what the team does. They just don't. They think they can roll out of bed, play baseball. And, it just doesn't usually work that way. Yeah, you can't pull fat, but if you are at least somewhat muscular, you can pull muscles, and that happened to Moncada. Moncada's saving grace is, and the other reason why he'll get signed is saving grace is his defense, at least at third. And even in like the 12 games that he played this season, he was driving the ball. Like there's always been the potential of him. There's always this idea that Yoan Moncada can be a superstar, because at one point that's what he was projected to be. And they were comparing him to Robinson Cano. And just the injuries and the inconsistency, it just never happened. But he's going to come relatively cheap, too, for his talent. I mean, he still has the talent. So, he only has two flaws: availability and consistency. That's it. And the third, work ethic. So that's why I'm not going to say any team that signs him is crazy, and because it's a low-risk move. And according to baseball reporter Francis Romero, who tweeted this out at Francis Romero FR, sources, infielder Yoan Moncada is generating interest in the free agent market. More than 5 MLB teams are interested in Moncada. Among the teams that have monitored him are the Blue Jays, Yankees, and Mariners. Although buyer beware, Moncada might just also have the worst luck possible, because as Romero later reported, Moncada just left Cuba's game against Korea in the Premier 12, and that tournament, that's taking that side is taking place in Taipei. So that happened about 5 hours ago. Took a pitch right off his right hand and had to leave the game. And I searched, obviously, through the Twitterverse, seeing that, they were already wrapping his hand. I mean, if he breaks his hand, at some point, then you got to be like, is this guy also just unlucky? You got to take that into account. the Yankees might be a good fit for him just because he wouldn't be asked to do too much, unless my fear would be is, are you asking him to replace Gleyber Torres? Because Moncada is a third baseman. This idea that he could be a shortstop or a second baseman or even a first baseman, no. It's third baseman. And if you want to bring him in for depth, fine. Third baseman, pitch hitter off the bat. I mean, off the bench. Try it. You're the Yankees. You somehow found a way to have Duke Ellis help you out. So do it. But if you're going to try him out at like second, I'm going to say you're crazy. Okay? That I would say you're crazy. Doesn't work. It was a failed. The Blue Jays and the Mariners kicking the tires on Moncada makes sense too. These are teams in the gray area of should they push themselves forward to get back into the playoffs, or do they need to take a step back? A move like Moncada can't hurt for those teams in the gray area because he's still 29. And if he proves he can stay on the field and hit, well, you can always try to retain him for a couple more years till he turns 33. Or if you decide to do some more tinkering, maybe some retooling, and again, if he produces and stays on the field, this is the biggest thing. He's got to produce and stay on the field, then trade him at the deadline. But the key is, you got to get Moncada to stay motivated and also to take care of himself. Because, where the Sox are to blame in the entire Moncada problem, sorry about that, Peter Brady there, in the entire Moncada problem is they just shouldn't have paid him in the first place. And those are intangibles that teams must find out about their players. What are their motivating factors? It's hard, but are they motivated by the love of the game and being the best every single day, regardless of the paycheck? Are they passionate about baseball? Or are they just motivated by the paycheck and getting the biggest possible check? And there's nothing wrong with being motivated by the paycheck. Just don't be the team that gives that player the bag. That's it. That's all you have to avoid. With those guys, you play the arbitration game. And the Sox should have done that with Yoan Moncada. And then when it ends, wish him well on his future endeavors, much like the Nationals did with Anthony Rendon. Anthony Rendon is the poster child, or the poster guy, of what I'm talking about here. Guys admitted this is just his job. And he played great for the Nationals. Then he got his bag of money, and he's barely been heard from. He's always hurt. Speculation is he's not taking care of himself much. That's the thing. You just don't want to pay them. And that's what the White Sox did incorrectly. They paid Yoan Moncada when they should have assessed that, hey, this guy's probably motivated by the money. And again, nothing wrong with that. He just might not have the passion for baseball. And you could say, well, he's played in the World Baseball Classic. Well, that's a different type of animal. And also, well, he's playing the Premier 12. Yeah, he's got to showcase himself now. But, you just got to figure out, and again, it's very hard to do. There might be some HR issues, but you just got to figure out, is this a paycheck player? And if it is, don't give him the bag. Don't. Play the arbitration game and then move on. And again, another one, Aaron Judge. He got his bag of money. He's still out there putting up MVP seasons. Juan Soto is another one. I don't think Juan Soto is just going to take off. Be like, I got my money. I'm done. And maybe Moncada going to New York and seeing how winning is done could motivate him to maybe take care of himself a little bit better. But, hey, I just wish him the best. Speaking of wishing people the best, the Sox have begun their purge of terrible players off this roster. So let's discuss that next on Locked On White Sox. The World Series, Super Bowl, the Olympics, the world's top athletes get to play in these top-level sporting events thanks to one thing, teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammates when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They can find you the right policy to keep your financial legacy safely in your family's end zone. SelectQuote is one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience, helping over 2 million customers find over $700 billion in coverage since 1985. Other life insurance brokers offer impersonal, one-size-fits-all policies that may cost you more may cost you more and cover you less, while SelectQuote's licensed insurance agents work for you to tailor a life insurance policy for your individual needs in as little as 15 minutes. You invest so much time to take care of yourself to be the healthiest version of you. The healthiest, best version of you. Select Quote's exclusive policies can reward that same effort. If you're in good health, they work with carriers that could get you the same-day coverage for up to $5 million, no medical exam required, and these policies are more affordable than you think. You could get coverage for up to $1 million for as little as $20 a month. Get the right life insurance for you. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/lockedon. Go to selectquote.com/lockedon today to get started. That's selectquote.com/lockedon. Select Quote. They shop, you save. Welcome back into Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all my everydayers. Appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. Recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox or wherever they get their podcasts, as the show's available on all major podcast platforms. And hey, feel free to leave a 5-star review if you still listen via the audio version. All right, so the much-needed roster purge of a putrid team that won just 41 games continued this week as Nicky Lopez and Sammy Peralta cleared waivers and elected free agency. 2 weeks back, pitchers Matt Foster and Jimmy Lambert, they also elected free agency rather than going back to the minors. More turnover needs to happen, but thankfully the purge is happening as it also started with declining Yoan Moncada's option. And, hey, Nicky Lopez, great community guy, Naperville guy made good. But his being here was one of the flawed, let's see if a guy can replicate his career season to turn things around. I mean, that's what he represented. And that, because to me, that's one of the few things that I thought, this is why the White Sox are targeting Nicky Lopez. Part of it was he was a former Royal. That's the other thing. Let's get rid of all these former Royals that were tied to Chris Getz when he was with the Royals, okay? Obviously going forward, let's bring in some former Royals because now the Royals look like they're going to be a successful organization. But, when Chris Getz was there, they were kind of, falling apart in terms of from their World Series days. That great World Series team was pulling apart because they were reaching free agency. Kansas City couldn't afford them, and they didn't do a really good job of replacing any of those guys. Nicky Lopez maybe was one of those guys, but, because he had a career year, but the evidence would have shown you that he was never going to replicate that. And he was a Gold Glove finalist for the White Sox. Did you know that? The White Sox actually had a Gold Glove finalist. Shocking to me, too, with the way they played defense. But again, he was never going to replicate that 2021 season where he hit 300. It just wasn't going to happen because you shouldn't have fallen for the banana in the tailpipe, or at least asked for him in the Aaron Bummer deal, because you just should have looked at the numbers. And especially Atlanta was going to probably do the same thing that the White Sox just did. They were going to waive him, and he was going to probably be available on the free agent market. You could have probably brought him in as a non-roster invite. But look at thinking that he was going to have that another potential career season. He had a 744 OPS in 2021, and the bulk of it was made up by his on-base percentage. His OPS plus that year was a 104. So that, even the Royals should have realized, we should have cashed out after his 2021 season because his numbers plummeted, and he's just been what he is. 240 hitter, decent on-base percentage guy, has some decent speed, no power whatsoever. Good clubhouse guy, but again, he's just a run-of-the-mill player, and he was projected to make a couple million in arbitration. So this is a roster purge move that they had to make. Although I'm surprised Sammy Peralta elected free agency. I mean, could have kept racking up frequent flyer miles between Charlotte and Chicago. I mean, holy cow, how many times did this organization see something that just wasn't there? I mean, I know he was a lefty, but his whip, it was an indication that you're going to have some major command issues. 1.867 whip this season in 9 games, 1.5 last year. No command. Okay. And I would like to see Brian Bannister possibly suggest, hey, let's monitor whip more, at least on our bullpen arms. That way we don't have to even waste our time. I mean, I know the pitching czar emphasizes throw your best pitches for strikes and throw them a lot, but Peralta just couldn't throw many strikes. Well, at least he couldn't command the ball very well. Lambert and Foster just could not stay healthy, and these are moves the Sox need to make if they hope to start turning things around to get back to 61 wins. And again, it's sad that we should actually want to hope the White Sox replicate the 2023 season, at least in terms of the win production, because guess what? It can get worse. Although I don't know. I mean, the only way that it could get worse next season is the White Sox actually break the 1916 Philadelphia A's record for the worst loss, the worst winning percentage ever. I don't think they'll break the Cleveland Spiders, actual record for the worst record ever, but at this point, anything's possible with the White Sox when it comes to being horrifically awful. But I would like to see the purge continue too, especially with these fringe guys. Corey Julks, thank you for your brief moment of hope this year, but he's not going to be a regular everyday player. Chucky Robinson, love how he hits without batting gloves, but he's an emergency catcher at best. Steven Wilson, no thank you. Don't know why Braden Shoemake is still on the 40-man. Free Oscar Colas. Jacob Amaya, okay, I'm on the fence only because he was meh. But hey, if you really think Colson Montgomery is just a few months in AAA more to prove that September and the Arizona Fall League was the real him, he is him. I mean, Amaya isn't a terrible, cheap bridge option, especially if you want to platoon him with a rotation of Brooks Baldwin and Lenine Sosa. Just saying. But go big with your purge finally, and non-tender Andrew Vaughn and Gavin Sheets, replacement level players who represent a failed previous administration and a failed previous rebuild. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And I'll be back tomorrow to discuss if you and I should be upset if the Sox do tender a contract to Andrew Vaughn. And also, I'll have another Top 5 Friday. Let's go over the top 5 home run hitters in White Sox history. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion, power ranking the teams interested in Garrett Crochet, Yoan Moncada's free agent market, and the roster purge beginning. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at ToddJDub or at Locked On Sox, or email me at LockedOnWhiteSox@gmail.com. Have a great day. I will see you tomorrow.